the silent grief no one talks about. I want to talk about a kind of grief most people don't understand. A grief that does not get casseroles, sympathy cards, or community support. A grief that lives in the shadows because people don't know what to say, or they are afraid to say the wrong thing. I'm talking about parental estrangement, and I'm going to share my story, not to expose anyone, not to blame, not to retaliate, but because someone out there is living this in silence and may need to know they are not alone. My story starts long before the estrangement. It starts when I was young, in university, working part-time, supporting myself in my own apartment. I did not have family to fall back on. I was building my life from scratch. And then I met someone who seemed to see me in a way no one ever had. He had charm. He sang me love songs. He said all the right things. He made me feel chosen. I asked him not to move in, but he never left. And because I had no safety net, no one to guide me, I convinced myself this was love. He told me stories about abandonment, betrayal, and grief. I felt compassion. I felt responsible. But slowly, things started to go missing. My professional bicycle, a gold ring my brother had given me. I was on a limited income, and suddenly I was paying for things I did not use, like phone bills from sex lines. And the first time we disagreed, he locked me out of my own apartment. The neighbors threatened to call the police if he didn't let me in. That's how the relationship began. And I didn't know then what that pattern would cost me. Decades later, on my birthday, he told me he had been having an affair with someone we both knew. And then he told me about the others, the women, the prostitutes, the secret relationships, the gambling, the criminal behavior, the disappearances, the threats, the gaslighting. I was 41 years old, sitting in a clinic getting tested because of someone else's choices. I was exhausted. I was done. I wanted out, but leaving was not simple. For 11 weeks, after the kids went to bed, he hounded me about reconciliation. I had not slept in 11 weeks. I was desperate for peace, so I agreed on one condition: marriage counseling. He had refused counseling for years, but now he agreed, and for a moment I thought maybe things could change. But eventually, I discovered another girlfriend, another betrayal, another shattering. Around the same time, strange things started happening, like the brakes failing, my wheels coming off on the highway. My father passed away. My world was collapsing from every direction, and then came the part of the story that still feels surreal. He refused me access to my child. He told me my child hated me. He controlled communication. He withheld school. He withheld medical care. He withheld everything. He put charges on my credit cards. He refused to pay the mortgage. He sent me to collections 5 times. We had a business together, and he left me with the bills, but none of the income. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. The family dog was attacked and left injured for a week. I drove 1,800 kilometers and spent $1,000 to save her life. And through all of this, he convinced my daughter that I was dangerous, that I would kidnap her. She was hysterical when I came to pick up the dog. That moment broke something inside me that I didn't know could break. I went to court. I spent $40,000 in legal fees. And in 8 years, I have seen my child for 10 hours. 10 hours. There was no justice in the justice system. There was no protection for the bond between a mother and her child. There was no recognition of the psychological manipulation happening behind closed doors. People don't know how to react to this kind of grief. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to support you. And so you learn to carry it alone. My child's loyalty is about survival, about staying safe in an environment where fear is stronger than freedom, where rejecting me earns approval, where empathy is replaced with self-protection, where love becomes a liability. Historically, it was fathers who were alienated from their children. But today, more and more women are living this devastating reality, and the silence around it is suffocating. Estrangement as a grief without closure. A grief that wakes up with you every morning. A grief that sits in your chest like a stone. A grief that forces you to rebuild your identity outside of motherhood, even when motherhood was the most sacred part of your life. And yet, somehow, healing is still possible. Not by pretending it didn't happen. Not by forcing reconciliation. Not by waiting for apologies that may never come. Healing happens when you allow yourself to feel the pain, sometimes daily, without letting it define you. Healing happens when you learn emotional regulation, boundaries, and self-worth on a level you never needed before. Healing happens when you stop blaming yourself for things you did not choose. Healing happens when you turn your pain into wisdom. And that wisdom becomes purpose. Because a problem becomes purpose when you move through 4 stages. You experience it, you understand it, you transcend it, and eventually you guide others through it. That's why I'm sharing this. Not to reopen wounds, not to expose my child, but to reach the parents who are living this silent grief and think they are the only ones. You are not alone. You are not unlovable. You are not forgotten. And your story is not over. Estrangement may be part of your journey, but it does not get to be the end of it. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to become someone new. And you are allowed to transform this pain into something that helps others feel less alone. That is how grief becomes wisdom. That is how suffering becomes strength. That is how a broken heart becomes a lighthouse. And that is how you rise.